At Sierra, discover great deals on top brand workout gear, like high-quality walking shoes, which might lead to another discovery.
40,000 steps, baby. Who's on top now, Karen?
You've taken the office step challenge a step too far. Don't worry, though. Sierra also has yoga gear. It might be a good place to find your zen. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
On WhatsApp, no one can see or hear your personal messages. Whether it's a voice call, message, or sending a password. To WhatsApp, it's all just this. So whether you're sharing the streaming password in the family chat or trading those late-night voice messages that could basically become a podcast, your personal messages stay between you, your friends, and your family. No one else. Not even us. WhatsApp. Message privately with everyone.
Unfiltered discussions. Unexpected guests. No topic is off limits. From sex and relationships to the human condition, personal anxieties, and so much more. The only talk show of its kind in the world. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
It's Wednesday on The Last Show, the program where you'll learn something but might be stupider for it. Here's what we'll cover on tonight's show. Suppose you're on the moon and you need to power your laptop to watch your Netflix. Problem: there's no power plant, and if you have solar panels, well, a day lasts about 30 Earth days on the moon, so that's a lot of darkness. So what do we need to solve our moon power needs? A nuclear reactor, and that's exactly what one space agency has announced, a directive to speed up the construction of just that. Details in about 10 minutes' time. Then we'll answer a spicy question. When it comes to dating, does when you've had previous partners matter more than how many you've had? That's right, there's a new global study that flips the assumption about your sexual history and reveals how many partners we want our partners to have had and when. Are there double standards there? All things we'll explore and you'll learn about at the beginning of next hour. That's just some of what we'll cover tonight. We'll discuss how to deal with bad days on Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday, our weekly mental health segment. It's going to be a great program. But for now, let's jump in after this.
Want to be part of The Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
And in elaborately staged, low-budget wildlife theater meets insurance scam news, we cover Operation Bear Claw out of Los Angeles. We are joined by Tony Five, foreign correspondent in London, England, reporting live from the scene of his apartment to discuss what maybe is my favorite alleged insurance scheme of all time. Tony, welcome to the show.
David, let's underline the word alleged, because this is one of the most ridiculous stories I have ever heard in my life. Hello, everybody. Hello, world. We're here reporting live from my house in London of an alleged bear attack, David. It was amazing, my friend. A bear, not even attacking people, attacking cars and causing hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of damage, my friend.
Nice cars too. So these people, they had a Rolls Royce, they had a Mercedes, they had actually two Mercedes.
Yeah, and a Rolls Royce Ghost, no less, which is like one of the top end cars, a couple of $100,000 this car is.
All right, so they had these cars and the cars get damaged, so they submit some grainy footage to the insurance company of a gigantic bear with claws, like mauling the cars, destroying the cars so they can get their payout. This happened last year.
Yeah, wait. I'm thinking how horrific this must have been. Traumatic for the owners. A bear getting into your beautiful Mercedes, your beautiful Rolls Royce, ripping the leather apart, ripping the cars apart, you know? It's heartbreaking when you think about it.
Except the video looked a little fishy, and so the insurance company sent it to a wildlife official.
Yeah. And the wildlife official sort of looked at it and went, guys, I'm an official and I love my wildlife. I love bears. That's not a bear.
Yeah, a biologist was quoted as saying, nope, that's definitely a human in a bear suit.
I mean, that is years of study, years of biology, qualification from the top universities in the world. And his response was, I'm pretty sure that's a person in a bear suit.
Yeah, he was hoping from a call from some biology journal about his paper that was 5,000 pages about the mating habits of some bear in some ecosystem. But no, it was an insurance company saying, hey, could you review this video of a person in a bear suit?
He's been sat there thinking that dissertation he did about the mating rituals of a particular Peruvian bear in the wildlife that he had to trek down was finally newsworthy. And so they contacted the only bear expert in the world in that area. He's sitting there rubbing his hand. He's telling his girlfriend, he's telling all his friends, guys, I'm going to be on the news. And it was just to disprove a bear had got into a car and it was actually a man or woman dressed in a bear suit.
Earlier in the day, he got a call from the writers of Paddington and he was just as upset. No, I made that part up. All right. So the insurance company's armed with this fishy video and an expert saying that it's likely just a person in a bear costume. They, I guess, got a warrant or authorities searched the apartment.
Yeah.
They find a bear costume.
Fantastic. I still think they're innocent. They found a bear costume. Not only did they find a bear costume, they found one of these bear claws.
No, it was a meat claw that looked suspiciously like bear claws.
Yeah, so they're meat claws. I've seen them. So what they are for is when you're having stuff like pulled pork on the barbecue, you use these claws to tear up the tender meat. You can buy them, and they're actually called the bear claw. You can Google them. So I looked at the picture because obviously there's videos of the evidence and the footage they found, and allegedly they used this thing that they used to, cut meat inside the car.
It is alleged. We can't prove that the costume that they found at the house was used for the scam.
David, it could have been used for any other bear-related sort of shenanigans. I love the use of shenanigans. If that is not the best use of shenanigans, I don't know what is.
Anyway, this happened last year, but they appeared before a judge today, and my goodness, this is the opposite of the bear expert having a terrible day, realizing that their whole career amounted to him confirming that it was in fact a bear costume. This is the opposite of that. You wait your whole day going to law school, becoming a lawyer, trying to work your way to become a judge. You have to deal with all these murder cases, these assault cases, these robbery. Finally, you get a break and you end up with the best possible case before you. I would go to law school if I could somehow guarantee that I would be a judge and I would be able to take this case.
Do you think they go to law school thinking, okay, I could be the next OJ judge? I could be Judge Ito. I could be there, that I'll forever be remembered. And then they get the bear case, the ultimate case. I would love to get this judge on board.
Me too. I would be sitting there as a judge with just a grin from ear to ear. I like the defense, the prosecution. I would get so much joy out of trying this case.
I'd probably quit because nothing ever will meet that joy again, right?
No.
Like no other case ever. If he sees stuff because this is like a smaller court, right? Like for fraud and stuff, it doesn't go into the murder trials or the big one. So obviously for this one, this guy usually sees misdemeanor crimes, right? He usually sees fraud, car crime, that like petty theft. This is the peak, right? There's nothing that must be better.
Now, if you're going to commit insurance fraud, and I'm not advising you do, I'm not a lawyer, but don't do insurance fraud, why would you submit the video? Why don't you just say a bear mauled our cars, take pictures of the damaged cars, and then just submit the cars to the insurance company? And then if they don't believe you, they don't believe you. Your scam failed. Why submit the video evidence that is so obviously a person in a bear suit, allegedly? It's just too much, and I would encourage anybody to look up bear insurance fraud damaged cars to watch this video because it'll brighten your day. It'll brighten your day.
If you were to go down that route, David, I think we should also consider why keep the bear suit and the bear claw in the house?
Actually, that's evidence for the defense, right? Why would we keep the suit if we were committing fraud with the suit? The suit was just a part of some other scheme that was definitely legal. That's a defense right there. Again, I'm not a lawyer.
That's very good. I mean, we could actually be lawyers. I like your way of thinking, my friend. So what? I've got a bear suit. This is what I do. I dress up like a bear and I barbecue. That's actually quite a good defense.
I guess the moral of the story is kids don't do insurance fraud. But if you're going to do insurance fraud, don't dress up as a bear and then submit a video of you in a bear costume.
In grainy video.
You didn't think the companies would know, allegedly?
Again, if you're going to submit it to a grain video, hope to hell there isn't a bear expert who will quite literally watch for the first 15 seconds and realize it's not a bear and it's just a person in a bear suit.
Should we do a moment of silence for that biologist whose low point of their career was commenting on this video, having Such high hopes for becoming a biologist, only to have that video.
I would love to get him and find out how he felt when the cops called and the lawyers called and said, we need you. Because it's called an expert witness. That's what they're called. He's an expert witness. And weirdly, he didn't need to be he could have been anybody with eyes. That was the requirement to be an expert witness. Somebody with eyes who could identify a person in a costume.
And I have to say, these allegations are not proved in court. It's all alleged. And please don't sue us, bear people, or alleged bear people.
Or bears.
Or bears. Yeah, we don't want the bears generating lawsuits. What a great case. Tony, it's always a pleasure doing, well, is it the news that we do on the show? It's always a pleasure doing something with you on this program.
I mean, they're barefaced facts, David.
Well done.
Thank you.
Up next, details about a newly announced power plant on the moon. Cool.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Keep listening to The Last Show with David Cooper, because the alien invasion can wait. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Suppose you're on the moon and you need power to watch Netflix. How do you make power on the moon? Because a lot of it's dark and, there's no power plants and stuff. Well, the U.S. government is going to go forward with a moon reactor, and we're here to discuss that with astrophysicist at York University and co-author of Daydreaming in the Solar System, a book available wherever books are sold. I've said books too many times in one sentence. His name is Dr. Jesse Rogerson. Jesse, welcome to the show.
Hey, David. Thanks for having me back.
The U.S. government doesn't always make announcements that pleases many people, but let's talk about this one. This one's pretty cool because I'm thinking if I'm ever on the moon, I'm going to need to power Netflix on my laptop. How am I going to do that?
Yes, your next trip that you have planned to go to the moon, of course. Yeah, the moon is an interesting place. Like we're going there. Like America has a huge program set up to get to the orbit of the moon, to land on the moon, to start looking into, especially at the South Pole, looking into the water that's there, because there seems to be a lot of frozen water at the South Pole. And so if you're going to set up like a semi-permanent group of people, researchers, an outpost on the moon, you need power. And you would say probably the easiest thing to do would be solar panels, which in a lot of cases it is. The problem with the moon is that it has a day just like we have a day, but our day is 24 hours and you get sun every 12 hours and it's great. But on the moon, you have 14 days of sunlight and then 14 days of darkness. So what do you do in those 14 days? You need some other way of developing power, and a nuclear reactor would be the way.
I got it. You got panels on either side and then a big cable that connects them. Huh? A moon-length cable?
You know what? That's actually... I thought that myself, actually, when I was thinking about this actually a couple of years ago. Why not build infrastructure? Why not build solar panels all over the moon and then connect them with cables, and then that would be great. And we should do that, David. That would be a great idea. The problem is that would take a lot longer to develop, to lay the groundwork, to put everything in place. And it does open you up to thousands of kilometers of possible places you might need to go fix something. So there's downsides, but in principle, that would be the better solution. The upside to doing this other one, where you make a nuclear reactor, is it can go into places not just dark side of the moon, but you can go to the south pole of the moon where there's permanently shadowed craters. And then if the technology demonstrates well, you can take it to Mars.
I love that we live in a world where a long cable is harder than firing atoms at other atoms so that they merge and a neutron or a proton gets destroyed and it releases energy. And I think I just described what a nuclear reactor is.
It's close enough.
I love that we live in a world where it's like, yeah, it's much easier to split the atom or whatever, or join the atom, who knows what. I should not be a nuclear physicist, than running a long cable. Because if you ask me to do two of those things, I could go in my messy cable drawer, which my girlfriend hates and wants me to organize, and I could run a long cable. So how would it work? Would the U.S. run a power plant and then sell the power to all the private companies mining the moon, potentially other countries on the moon, things like that?
Oh my gosh, I didn't even think of that, David. That is a really good point. Yeah, because it's we're in a whole new space exploration universe now where it's not just countries going there to do things, it's private companies. When we start mining asteroids and mining the moon, the world is going to be a very different place. But now that I'm thinking about that, certainly you're going to set your reactor up. And by the way, this was recently announced, but it was the first of this program started like 2 or 3 years ago, where they started asking industry partners to develop concepts of nuclear reactors. So they've been thinking about this for a while. The question is, once you put one on the moon and you get it going, you would certainly fuel your stuff, but there's going to be other countries. China's going to be there. Would you sell them stuff? Russia's going to be there. The United States, Canada, Europe, Japan consortium is going to be there. Yeah, start selling it, start making a profit. I mean, if you're America, isn't that the way to go?
I guess so, but if the country runs the plant, isn't that nationalized power utilities? Isn't that socialism? But that's a conversation for another day. So what would this reactor look like? Is it just going to look like a regular old nuclear plant, just happen to be on the moon, or will there be something unique about it?
That is a good question that I also don't know the answer to. They're in the middle. They've reached out to a few different partners, and they've all kind of submitted concepts that vary in different ways. It depends on the partner. That they sort of kept the requirements open to allow the industry to be creative. So it could look like a variety of different things. We use things like these nuclear fission reactors all over the place. We have them on the ground here on Earth, but we also put them in spacecrafts where you get fissionable material and you let it break apart and you do the reaction that you said. And we in Canada are really good at making these, and they fit in small rooms. The CANDO reactor I say a small room.
Yes, can do. Oh yeah, I was waiting for that one. That's the
the CANDO reactors.
Canada's like internationally well known for its great nuclear power reactors.
Yeah, great, very efficient, and very safe, I would say. But we also Canada lives in. There's no major fault lines here that we need to worry about, which is one of the things that makes nuclear reactors unsafe. But so I mean, I don't know what these concepts look like, but they would be small enough. 6 metric tons is now the size that they're going for. So something as no bigger than I don't know. What's 6 metric tons? Maybe like 6 or 7 cars?
Yeah, that's like a small transport trailer. That's not heavy at all. I mean, I couldn't bench more than 5 pounds, but still.
So, small enough to get it. You need to put it on a rocket. It needs to be able to be deployable, and it needs to be able to run itself. So it needs to be small and sort of automated. After that, I don't really know what they look like.
Are Russia and the U.S. in contact over power on the moon? Is there some kind of rekindling of the space agencies speaking to one another? Because I knew there was some tension there, some talk about closing the ISS early, things like that.
Yeah, interesting question. So this is what I love about this story about reactors on the moon is, I think it shows that we're not shy about getting out into space. We've spent 20 years perfecting low Earth orbit, and that was a huge partnership with United States and Russia were the biggest one. The ISS was started in 1998, and it completed its construction in the mid-2010s. And United States, Russia, Canada, Europe, and Japan have been operating that spacecraft, the most complicated space station ever made, in low Earth orbit for like 25 years. But that thing is not going to last forever. It showed us that we can do difficult things and we can work together in space. And even during huge political tensions, big problems going on in the world, United States and Russia have been able to keep that partnership going because they both recognize that the ISS has been incredibly important to their technological development and their next steps out. Now, we're jumping off to the moon. We're ready to go further. We need new power, and we need to continue thinking about how to work with each other. And so Sean Duffy, the administrator, Trump-appointed NASA administrator, and the Russian counterpart have met and actually talked in person, which hasn't happened in a while. I think the last time they've actually talked in person was before 2020, if I'm not mistaken. And they have agreed to a few handshake things, like, for example, keeping the ISS orbiting the Earth till at least 2028. And that's really important because both the US and Russia are the biggest funding partners. We wouldn't be able to fly it without them. And then how would you deorbit it after that? Which is so sad to think. What is it? It's 2025. We're thinking about deorbiting it in 3 years.
Yeah.
3 years, and we might be done with our ISS just because it's old, not because the United States and Russia want to get rid of it. And that's really sad. But it's good that they're talking about it. It's good that they're maintaining their partnership and that we may not see a catastrophic destruction of our space exploration.
Yeah, I mean, what does deorbiting look like? They just crash it into the ocean somewhere? There's like a little kind of radius in the ocean where there ain't much, and they deorbit everything there?
That would be the idea. Yeah, I would imagine that they would pull pieces of it off. I don't think they would deorbit it all on one go, that you would slowly deorbit it, take pieces apart and let them fall in. You do it over the Pacific where there's the least amount of humanity. And that's it. It's the end of an era. But, looking towards the future, the way the United States has been going for the last 20 years is working more and more with industry partners. And I would imagine, and I think Sean Duffy has been talking about this, the idea now is we don't need to build our own space stations around the Earth. We should get private companies to do it.
Well, Dr. Jesse Rogerson is an astrophysicist at York University and co-author of Daydreaming in the Solar System. Find that wherever books are sold. Jesse, thanks for the chat. I always appreciate you coming on the show.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Up next, those rough days where you're feeling really depressed and don't want to face the world. We'll give you tips on how to deal with them in an intimate way. I'm David Cooper. This is The Last Show.
Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku. And it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Broadcasting intimate confessions and useless obsessions. You're listening to The Last Show with David Cooper.
The other day, I had a day. Maybe you've had a day like this. You feel loathsome. You feel lonely. A bad day. I felt like there was no one I could reach out to. Things weren't going great. I didn't spiral because I had certain tools to help me from spiraling, and we're going to discuss just that. Having a day, dealing with a day here on Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday. Gary Direnfeld is here. He's a therapist, a social worker, a friend, and we discuss all things mental health, and it's broadcasting's only mental health segment intended for a Thursday that airs on a Wednesday. I'll stop talking. Gary, welcome to the show.
Good to be with you. Listen, that bad day, how are you now?
I'm actually fine. I got a good night's sleep that night, and my girlfriend was like, why don't you text this friend that you were supposed to hang out with? And I was like, fine. I invited a friend over for dinner. He came with another friend. That evening, I was fine, but I was just walking through the streets. I had some errands to run, and I didn't want to talk to my barista. I didn't want to go to the deli. I didn't want to go to the grocery store. I didn't want to face anyone. I didn't want to be seen. I felt this anxiety and pain in my chest. It felt like kind of a reverberation of when I was very not well about 10 years ago and had, episodes of depression. It was a really bad day.
Okay, but given what you're telling me, it wasn't just a bad day. It was triggering for times in the past where you really weren't well mentally.
Yes.
And that sounds scary on top of a bad day.
It was a little scary, but I've learned, and I know this sounds so cliche, but this too shall pass vibes. I know to take a deep breath and think this is the mood of the day. What I feel is real right now. I'm not trying to discount how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
But I've gone through this cycle before. I've gone through days like this before. It doesn't feel like I'll ever have a good day again. But I know I felt that way and then had a good day the next day. And so I'm able to remind myself of that and not spiral.
Good for you. Good for you. There's something about being in that place, in that mood. It feels like it will never change, that this is it forever. And that's what you're describing as well.
Yes. But I've been there, and I've also talked with my therapist, and I think I've talked about this on the show, if not with you, with Tony Five, our foreign correspondent, this idea that when you're having a great day and things are going well and you feel like you have community and you're supported and things are going well with work and your social life and your romantic life, you're just having one of those good days, pretty much an opposite day. Sit down. If you have to journal about it, make a mental note, be like, I've had a bad day where I thought this could never happen. It happened. It's happening now. I'm having a good day. This whole cycle of losing your imagination for the future being positive, but then the future being positive. I've been through this before. I know to take a deep breath when I have those low moments. Like, that's my best skill for dealing with a day like that.
Right. You know, you're reminding me of a time in my life. Oh my God, I'm a little older than you. So this goes back to the mid-90s. I was given the task of putting together a brain injury rehabilitation program, actually. Grew into Canada's largest at the time. But along the way, I had to work with a fellow whose ego couldn't, the room wasn't big enough for his ego.
Wait, I didn't help you out on that project. What are you talking about?
A different ego. And I'm in charge, yet this guy is competing with me for being in charge, and he's doing things he shouldn't be doing. He was 20, 30 years my senior at the time. I didn't know how to confront him. I was overwhelmed, and I was losing sleep. And I would say to him, I'll never sleep again. For me, it was anxiety at the time about the situation. And one night, no sleep. 2 nights, no sleep. By the third night, I'm dead. I just crash. Wake up the next morning and realize I just have to confront this guy, which I do, and it solves the issue. Month later, same SH, different day.
Sorry, same SH what?
You get it.
But you're going through this cycle of having to deal with this jerk, and then
that's right. And it repeats itself. And again, I think I'll never sleep again. By the third night, I realize I will sleep because, I crashed, get up the next day, realize I got to confront him again, resolve the issue. That happened 3 times over the course of 3 months. And finally, I realized there are some nights I'm not going to have sleep. I don't fight it. I know that I will eventually sleep again. I got up and I think I painted a room in the house. Another night I, did some report writing. But I leaned into not sleeping versus saying, oh, this is awful, I'm going to be a wreck, and catastrophizing it. I leaned into it and just used the time. And my lesson back then is kind of like your lesson today, and what you were saying a moment ago. Journal those good days so that you remember them.
Don't waste a good day. Take stock on a good day as a toolkit to deal with the bad day.
Exactly. And so my lesson was, you're going to have sleepless nights. Welcome to the stress of life and work and responsibilities. But not all days are going to be stressful, and you'll eventually catch up with that sleep. And so I lean into my feelings now, and I'm less likely to add. David, in Jewish, there's a saying, tsuris mitsuris, problems on top of problems for the uninitiated. And so you have that bad day, it's triggering, and then it can be scary. Oh my goodness. I hope this isn't like, several years ago when my mental health was really, really off. That's tsuris mitsuris. You're thought building on top of the bad day. So we can't always control having a bad day. We can't always control, a sleepless night such as I had. But where we have to manage is the tsuris mitsuris, not adding problems on top of problems.
I believe that we can't always control our worst impulses, in the sense that, like, okay, I'm walking around on Saturday and I'm feeling agoraphobic. I'm feeling lonely. I'm feeling like I've got no friends, no community, no one to call. I don't want to be seen, and feel like even if I did want to be seen, no one would see me. I can't control the impulse.
Right.
And I think this is true for a lot of things. but we can control how much we engage with the impulse.
Yes. That's the surus mitsurus. The problems on top of problems.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I know, okay, these thoughts are going through my head. I'm not going to treat them like first-class citizens. They are just the mood of the day. They will pass. And I think it's like, imagine you've got jealousy with a coworker or something. You show up at work and you can't control that their behavior triggers you, but you can control how you act. You can control your actions. Don't judge yourself and feel really crappy about yourself based on what thoughts are entering your head, but control how you behave and control how much you engage with them.
And so this is a good time where, in a sense, you split your thinking, you split your attention. I'm having these bad feelings, but now I can observe myself having these bad feelings and ask myself, how do I want to manage myself in view of these bad feelings?
Yeah.
Okay. So you know, look, that's called mindfulness by definition.
It's funny because I always, when people mention mindfulness, I'm like, oh, that's woo-woo. I don't do that. But I guess that's exactly what I do. Taking stock of a good day and reminding myself on a bad day that a good day will come.
That's why I describe it before labeling it. Because if I tell people you have to practice mindfulness, they go woo-woo. Some of them, not all of them, of course. And all you're doing is splitting a part of yourself off so you can self-observe and then make choices around what you're observing.
Well, we are here with Gary Direnfeld, a therapist, a social worker. It is Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday. We're discussing how to deal with a particularly bad day, something that happened to me the other day, perhaps as a result of tapering off my medication. So when we come back, we'll talk tapering off meds, dealing with a bad day. Our conversation will continue. We'll be back with Gary Direnfeld in a minute.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
This episode is brought to you by Greenlight. Get this. Adults with financial literacy skills have 82% more wealth than those who don't. From swimming lessons to piano classes, us parents invest in so many things to enrich our kids' lives. But are we investing in their future financial success? With Greenlight, you can teach your kids financial literacy skills like earning, saving, and investing. And this investment costs less than that after-school treat. Start prioritizing their financial education and future today with a risk-free trial at greenlight.com/Spotify. Greenlight.com/Spotify.
When your therapist won't take your calls anymore, there's always the last show with David Cooper.
We are back with Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday, joined by social worker and therapist Gary Direnfeld. Gary, welcome to the show.
I always love being with you. You know that.
I went through a acrimonious... Look, I didn't have kids. I didn't have a house. In hindsight, maybe it wasn't that bad, but I was going through it mentally, dealing with being recently diagnosed with major depression, bipolar type 2. I was not in a good way, and I was dealing with a divorce. I think I buried the lead there, a divorce. And I got put on medication in 2014, near the end.
Okay.
I've been on these meds for 11 years.
Okay, not uncommon, by the way.
I find them helpful. We spent a long time tweaking them little by little. Me and my psychiatrist, I got on a mix of meds that was kind of working for me.
Mm-hmm.
In the last year, I've been curious about tapering off them, and I've been pretty stable, pretty happy. When I have low moments, low weeks, low months, they aren't, I don't bottom out. I don't get into fits of crying, and I don't feel unwell. They're just normal lows. Same with my highs. They don't feel like mania. They don't feel like I'm getting too up. I don't feel like I'm buzzing. So I've been very curious about going off my meds, and I've been doing that. And last Saturday, I was saying before the break, I had a bad day, and it was a bit alarming coming off my meds and having a day where I was feeling particularly depressed. And look, there's got to be listeners out there on meds or that know people on meds that help for psychiatric issues. You don't hear a lot about people's tapering off experiences. I don't. I'm sure you have as a therapist and social worker.
Plenty.
What are some of the things that you see come up when people decide to taper off their meds?
Well, first of all, you've given me the impression that you're still under the care of the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist is, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, leading you through that tapering, and you're doing it slowly over time.
You got it to a T. And I think a lot of people, like I go to a psychiatrist for talk therapy, but a lot of people will see a therapist who doesn't prescribe, and then they'll see a shrink,
yes,
a doctor, to just do med management. So they kind of work together with the therapist and then the person who's prescribing, and kind of as a group come with a taper plan. And I assume you've been part of a structure like that.
Absolutely. So look, common to need medications for things like major depression, bipolar disorder. And once you find the right meds for you with the help of your prescribing physician, after a half a year, several years, people start getting curious, reasonably, because no one wants to be on medications forever if they don't have to be, or few, want that scenario. And so after whatever that period of time is, and that curiosity, people start to wonder, do I still need the medication? Which is fine. So what we want to warn people about is, do not take yourself off that medication without medical supervision.
Yes.
Because you have to do so slowly over time. These medications, if the person just discontinues abruptly, it's really common, or they're at far greater risk of a backfire, if you will, that the symptoms, quickly reload themselves because the brain is saying, hey, where'd you go? I need you. What, it messes up the brain function. So if you want to discontinue medications, medical supervision slowly over time. And the interesting thing is, slower is faster. That may sound odd, but the slower you go, the more likely you are going to get further down the road than if you just discontinue meds altogether. When you are discontinuing those medications, you still may need them, but maybe not at the same level. So by discontinuing slowly, we see where you are week by week, month by month, and you may come to a particular threshold that when we go just below that, the symptoms may reappear. Now, having said that, just like that saying, sometimes a cigar is still just a cigar.
Yeah.
Sometimes a bad day is just a bad day.
Which is exactly what happened to me. I was like, oh no, I went off this one med and we've been doing it slowly, but I had a bad day. And my therapist, the first thing he said is, haven't you had bad days while you were on the medication? And I was like, oh yeah, and they've been worse than this last Saturday. So it's normal to have bad days. It's not like It's not like antidepressants are supposed to prevent them completely. They're supposed to just kind of like, what's the best way to describe this? Dampen them. Make the horrible days into bad days.
Right. Keep them within a threshold that's livable.
And that's exactly what I went through on Saturday. So I think for me, and I'm guilty of this sometimes, I over-pathologize things, which is to say, okay, I have a bad day, there's something wrong with my brain. It's like, no, sometimes a spade's a spade.
Yes.
Not every good experience is mania. Not every bad experience is major depression. You got to be careful not to just like go through the regular gambit of emotions that people go through and then label yourself as unwell because in the past you've been unwell. That's kind of a trap. And yeah, it's called over-pathologization.
There you go. And that is also where journaling, journaling, what do we mean by that? Get out a notepad, get out your phone, get out a computer, and just jot down a note that comments on your mood at the moment or in the day. And see if there is a pattern to that over time. So over the next month, you're going to keep track of, am I having these bad days with greater frequency? Then the other thing we want to look at is, okay, maybe you are. However, what else is going on in your life? Because we want to discern, do we want to attribute this to the reduction of medication? Or do we want to attribute it to some serious things that really have been going on in your life? So this figuring out this assessing of mood, it takes some skill, it takes some time, and sometimes it takes a third party to kind of help you look at that so that you can determine what's going on. You know, when we look at behavior change, there are different indices of behavior change. There's the intensity of the behavior, there's the duration, how long it lasts, there's the frequency, how often does this behavior occur. You know, sometimes we see behavior change in one indice, but not all three simultaneously. And people say, nothing's changing. I'm still feeling miserable. But then we say, let's look at the journal. Son of a gun. Yes, the intensity is the same. The duration is the same. But look, this is only once a week now, whereas before it was several times a week.
It just doesn't feel like an improvement when you're going through it.
Correct, because two of the indices haven't changed, one has. That is still a significant change. So having that third party, a therapist, a psychiatrist, psychologist, to help you assess where you're at, what's going on, so that we can help you look at multiple indices before we start messing around more one way or the other with your medication.
So in summary here, because I feel like we got some actual tips here. If you are going through it, if you are dealing with a day, so to speak, dealing with a rough day, don't overpathologize it. Don't think just because you're depressed for one day that it's going to last forever. And then go through that weird exercise of when things are good, having previously been bad, take stock and remind yourself that it'll pass and that you have the tools to deal with it. And don't spiral just because you're going through it on a given day. I feel like those are the two main tips here.
Those are great tips, and I appreciate your summary of them.
Gary Direnfeld, a therapist, a social worker. He joins us on Wednesdays for Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday. Gary, it's always a pleasure having you on the show. Thanks for being here.
Glad you're feeling better.
Oh, thanks. Up next, things will get spicy and we'll discuss sexuality, so sensitive listeners or parents with small children will want to be advised. But here's the question. When it comes to dating, does when somebody had their previous partners matter more than how many they've had? Salacious details in a minute.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Prime delivery is fast. How fast are we talking? We're talking puzzle toys and lick pad delivered so fast you can get this puppy under control fast. We're talking chew toys at your door without really waiting fast. Pee pads, cooling mat, and peg hammer fast and fast. And there's training TREATS faster than you can say sit fast. And now we can all relax and order these matching hoodies to get cozy and cute fast. Fast free delivery. It's on Prime.
Please be advised that the following program contains audio content that may be graphic and potentially triggering for some listeners. This content may include descriptions or sounds that some may find disturbing. Listener discretion is strongly advised. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
When it comes to love and people sizing you up based on your romantic history, it's not just how many people you've been with, it's when you've been with them. A new study reveals how the timing of a partner's sexual history shapes your attraction to them, your commitment to them, and even busts a couple myths about sexual double standards. I'm here with someone who worked on that study. His name is Dr. Andrew Thomas. He's an associate professor of psychology at Swansea University in Wales. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Wonderful to be here.
It's a fun topic area. I feel like there's so many videos on social media judging people for their romantic history, telling others not to judge. But I like that you put that all aside and looked at it from a real psychology perspective. What was the interest here?
Absolutely. So the interest was two parts. So first of all, this actually builds on an old study we did in 2016, right? Where we just focused on number. And we said, if you had a hypothetical suitor or partner, and they had sex with this many people, how interested would you be in going on a date with them? And we did that for like pretty much every number, like 0, 1, 2, up to like 20 plus. And we found this super interesting curve where people were most interested if someone had, say, 4 sexual partners, which is close to like the lifetime average, a bit underneath that. They were slightly less interested if they were a virgin, but not like completely put off. And then by the time you got to like 7 or 8 past partners, and then it really started going downhill. So we call that paper, people want a partner with a bit of a past, but not too much. Yeah, and that captured that sentiment. And that was also really cool because we found very little sex difference. So men and women were doing the same thing when the normal narrative is like, oh, if you're a guy, you're lionized if you have 1 million partners. And if you're a woman, it only matters if you're a virgin. Well, completely counter to that. When you actually ask people what they want, men and women give you similar responses. So that was really cool. But I was left like with this uneasy feeling that I was missing something. And 2 things came to mind. So the first is I'm an evolutionary psychologist. So I'm interested in human nature across culture. What are the consistencies? So I was like, this is really just tested in the UK sample. So is this a British thing or is this a human thing? So that was part 1. And then secondly, I was like, context probably matters here, right?
Sure.
Because if you had 4 past partners and they were all around your sort of sexual debut when you were experimenting when you were 16, and then you've really slowed down and just had long-term relationships since, like that description is very different to someone who has 4 past partners. And you know what? They were all in last Wednesday at the same time. Do you see what I mean? So straight away, even though the number is the same, the context adds something in terms of evaluation.
Sounds like an exciting Wednesday, but please keep going.
Well, it depends on your interests, right? And so I was like, how can we bring this context in? And I think this was particularly useful in terms of like manosphere conversations that you hear online, because it is very much about the number, and you are damned if the number is too high.
Yeah, that stuff's so ugly to me. I've always said, and my girlfriend hates when I say this, but I always say I have the temperament to be able to date a porn star. I do not care in the slightest. Your number could be in the 4 digits and it wouldn't bother me. What are some of the reasons that it bugs people or that it would put them off?
Yeah. So people have, when they've looked at this before, the commentary around this is very much being like, oh, it's this arbitrary thing that we care about in the West that, there's no reason for it and so it's bad. But when you actually think from an evolutionary perspective, when you think about a psychology that we've evolved over time to cope with reoccurring risks in the environment, you start looking at things in a different way. So if you think about the risks that are inherent in sex and relationships, it's things like catching an STI, which not many people know this, but like the outcomes for that are far worse in women. So most of the common STIs, women can actually become infertile because of them, whereas guys might not become infertile.
Especially in our evolutionary history where we didn't have cures for them.
Exactly. That's like a death sentence, right? Or an evolutionary dead end. So there's STI risk. There's also differences between people in how much they care about long-term relationships and just want casual sex. So some people, and there's nothing wrong with that, but some people would just have a life full of promiscuous sex and not really want to settle down. Whereas other people are more like, I want to marry my high school sweetheart, and if I never sleep with someone else, that's perfectly fine with me. So there's individual variation. And where that can become important is, if you're say, hey, I'm going to really invest heavily in someone as part of a long-term relationship, like time, resources, everything, but that's not matched, well, that could be a problem. I could be taken advantage of, someone could cheat on me, I could just waste my time. So there's some risks involved in sex and relationships, and the idea is that we pay attention to people's sexual history because it gives us a cue of potential risk. And so that takes it from the sort of, oh, it's just this arbitrary thing to, actually, this is something that we factor into the equation a little bit, and with good reason.
So that's a look without any reference to when those partners and the individual got together, got busy, did the thing. It is interesting. There's different, scenarios. Did this person have many partners long in the history? Did they have many partners throughout time evenly? Did they have many partners recently? What do we seem to prefer, or do we think of all these scenarios the same?
So in the study I showed, we used like almost like notches on a bedpost. So we showed a picture with lines on it. And the idea was like, this is when they started having sex. This is now. and then the lines show you when the partners happened, right? And we did a couple of conditions. We varied the numbers, by the way. So we did all of this for just 4 partners, then the whole thing again for 12 and the whole thing for 36. So we could see how the overall number affected things. But in terms of like the patterns, we had on one extreme, pretty much all of the partners right around sexual debut, and then a massive slowing down. So like lots of casual sex, and then one long-term partner for a few years, then another for a few years. So that's clearly someone who's like, I kind of experimented when I was younger. Maybe I didn't know what I wanted. So, I started relationships and they finished quickly. That was that sort of pattern. Then right in the middle, we had people who were basically equally spaced. So a series of medium to long-term relationships, which itself can raise a little bit of a red flag because it's more like the Leonardo DiCaprio effect then, right? Like, oh, you've reached 25, I break up with you. It's like a regular thing. Maybe there's something with that. And then the other end, the far end, was actually, you know what? When I was younger, I wasn't having that much sex with new people. But now, oh boy, I'm well up for new partners and all of the casual sex I can get. And what we found is that people were basically more drawn to that first one I talked about, where it looks like people, if they did have high numbers, it was kind of in the past, and now they've slowed down.
And I guess an interpretation for that would be, well, they're very experienced. They know what they're doing. I can have a lot of fun with them, but I can also kind of rely on them to settle down with me.
Yeah, they've got some experience. So they're clearly not unattractive to other people, right? And that's important. Sometimes people like to think I'm with someone who's attractive to others. I've got a good deal. But similarly, you're not going to be there thinking, are they actually interested in a long-term relationship, or am I just the latest one-night stand? Or even worse, like, are there other guys hanging around, or are there other women hanging around who might be competitors for me because a week ago you're having sex with them? So yeah, there's lots of information in those images, but people seem to be a bit more drawn to that sort of slowing down effect. But the overall number matters, right? So if you've got 36 past partners, no amount of shifting that back in time or pushing it back to sexual debut will overcome the difference between just saying I've got 4 versus 36 partners.
Well, given that, is there something to be said for those who've had a large number of partners? For example, that number 36 you just gave out. How do they view other people? Are they looking for people with their same number of partners? That is what we'll discuss as we go over a new paper that shows it's not just how many, but when, in terms of who we've slept with and how we view people. I'm here with Dr. Andrew Thomas, an associate professor of psychology at Swansea University in Wales. We'll be back with more of this in a moment.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Living with schizophrenia isn't easy, especially when you're not getting relief from some of your symptoms. It can be hard when you're still dealing with symptoms, like hearing voices or seeing things that aren't there. And negative symptoms, like feeling unmotivated or avoiding social situations. If this sounds familiar, it might be time to talk to your healthcare provider and explore a different kind of schizophrenia treatment. Discover your possibilities at treatingscz.com.
Please be advised that the following program contains audio content that may be graphic and potentially triggering for some listeners. This content may include descriptions or sounds that some may find disturbing. Listener discretion is strongly advised. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
When it comes to choosing a partner, it turns out people don't just count their past lovers. They look at when those encounters happened. A new study reveals how the timing of someone's sexual history influences their commitment to the other person. I'm here with someone who worked on that study. He's an associate professor of psychology at Swansea University in Wales, Dr. Andrew Thomas. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
So we're going through a study that doesn't just look at how we judge others based on their numbers, but we judge them based on when they slept with those other people or when those sexual encounters happened. We were discussing those that have a high number, perhaps being viewed by others as less desirable. The magic number you chose was 36.
Yeah.
Assuming I have the number 36, which if I were a cool guy, I would. My number's closer to negative 36, but that's a conversation for me and my therapist. Do I then judge others based on a scale, or am I just open to those who are as promiscuous as me?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting idea, and we did include it in the study, but in a kind of roundabout way. So there's this personality trait called sociosexuality, and what it basically means is your willingness to have casual sex or how much you like casual sex. And people who are high in sociosexuality tend to have lots of one-night stands and past sexual partners. So if someone said to me, I have 36 past partners, chances are they would have quite high sociosexuality. Now, within the study, we recorded the participants' sociosexuality. So we were able to say, hey, if we go to the participants who have specifically got lots of past partners, how do they respond to this? Because one idea that I had was that actually they may go the other way. They may say, oh, you've had 36 past partners in the last 6 months? Great. Okay, we're probably on the same page then. So that would be one hypothesis, that we would find the opposite, but we actually didn't. So what we found was that people who were high in sociosexuality, they were slightly more forgiving than those who had low sociosexuality, but the broad pattern was still the same. So people who were high in sociosexuality still preferred prospective partners who had 4 past partners rather than 12, and 12 rather than 36. And they still showed that sort of forgiveness effect over time when the past partners kind of shifted into the around sexual debut. But those effects were a bit smaller than someone who may have only had 1 or 2 past partners in their lifetime.
Now, I like to give this advice that you shouldn't judge other people based on their histories. And I think objectively, a lot of us like to think that conceptually, but are we consciously thinking about people's timeline when we're dating? Or is there this unconscious, subconscious gut reaction? I say I don't judge others based on their numbers and when it happened, but I subtly do, and I subtly prefer them less. Is that what's going on?
I think so. One thing I say at the start of the paper is you can't find a language and you can't find a country and you can't find a culture where there's not some way of talking about people's sexual history. Sometimes it might be a label, like he's a cad or he's a woman's man or something like that. But it's talked about everywhere, from Japan to sub-Saharan Africa. So it seems something that's kind of baked into our psychology. It's something that we're interested in. I think it's very foreign to talk specifically just about a number and just use that. I think people look at things more in the round and more holistically. Now, of course, like trying not to judge is a really good thing, especially in the modern age, right? Because some of the risks that you might have associated with casual sex, we've kind of taken care of with things like family planning and with contraception, right? But our ancestral mind, our sort of Iron Age brain in a modern skull, doesn't kind of recognize contraception. So if it did, then we might say, hey, it doesn't matter how many sexual partners someone has had. I'm not going to get an STD off them, so it's fine. But it doesn't work that way. We're kind of obsessed with certain things in the way that our ancestors were. And this is one of the reasons, by the way, why people are scared of, say, spiders and snakes. Even though in the UK, there's not an indigenous snake that can kill you and there's not an indigenous spider that can kill you. It's like if we updated our psychology to what's going on in the modern world, we'd have phobias of things like toilet seats, ducks, and pencils, not catching STDs from people who are using condoms.
Interesting. Or like, mishandling raw chicken.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Can your findings be used to challenge certain negative attitudes, maybe misogynistic ones? Like, for example, stereotypes about people with a certain number of sexual partners being somehow worth less than?
Absolutely. So I think it challenges the narrative in 2 ways. So one is that lack of sexual double standards. So when people talk about body count online, it's often like applying a particular judgment to men but not women, or vice versa. And people have it in their heads that there's a societal sexual double standard. What's really interesting is that when you ask individual people what they think, there's no evidence of a double standard. So straight away, this can help people see if you're listening to a podcast and they're saying it's one rule for men and one rule for women, it raises a massive question mark over that. And then the second thing is adding that nuance. So people often just talk about the number and that's it. This is showing straight away, well, actually, the moment you start looking at other things, that conclusion on how people evaluate partners shifts around. So yes, you've got a high number of past partners, but you know what? People are going to think of you very differently and a lot more favorably, depending on what that looks like in your history. There's also other things that we haven't looked at, right? Because if you had 4 past partners, equally spaced over the last 5 years, and they were all absolutely stunning bodybuilders, someone may think of you very differently to if you've had 4 past partners equally spaced in the past couple of years and they've all been very unattractive. So people make a holistic judgment, and where this research is showing that you can't just pin it on just one number.
Interesting. So my girlfriend by dating me is in this sort of dating unattractive people vote.
I think she's definitely dating up.
Oh,
100%.
Said no one ever. There's got to be outliers here, though, right? There's got to be people who just genuinely don't care about this number, right? I'd like to think I'm one of them.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of the time people don't discuss these numbers up front, right? There's sometimes this thing about, oh, we've been on our 9th date now and we've slept with each other, so can we talk about what the number is? So people are making decisions in the absence of that. But that is a bit of a modern thing as well, right? Because if you think about the environment that humans evolved in, small, close-knit communities of a maximum of 150 people gossip and everyone knows each other's business. So actually understanding and talking about people's sexual history is probably something that was very deeply embedded in conversation in traditional societies and in ancestral societies. And now with anonymity and doing dating kind of on your own, not involving friends and family, with unknown people, it actually makes it easier to conceal that stuff.
Well, if you look at it from the perspective of us evolving in small communities of 150 people, if your number of people you slept with is 150, you're definitely going to have a problem in that small community.
Precisely, yeah. I mean, even more of a problem if it was 149. It seems implying they're sleeping with themselves.
Yeah, well, there's nothing wrong with that. What if I don't know. Now, any other major takeaways you would want people to know from your study, or myths you want to dispel, or things you want people to know?
I think this is another really good example of people get really hung up on cross-cultural differences, and there were differences. So there are some societies like Norway that are a bit more sexually liberal than others like Slovakia in this sample. But generally speaking, if you take a step back and you look at the forest rather than the trees, you're seeing that everything's trending in the same direction. And I think that's a beautiful message about us having this common shared psychology, and that there's actually more in common between us than there are things that divide us.
Wow, what a great takeaway from a very specific subject matter area of research.
I thought about it a lot.
I'm here with Dr. Andrew Thomas, who's an associate professor of psychology at Swansea University in Wales. Andrew, I've enjoyed the chat. Thanks for being on the show.
You're very welcome.
Coming up after the break, we've all been asked to brainstorm ideas before, but could Googling your way through a brainstorming session be the reason you and everyone you're working with comes up with the same old, boring ideas? In a few moments, we'll explore how the internet might be silently eating your creativity, one search result at a time.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
In the 70s, 4 young women were found dead. For nearly 50 years, their cases went cold. I'm Nancy Hixt, a senior crime reporter for Global News. In the season finale of Crime Beat, I share how investigators uncovered shocking evidence of a serial killer and hear exclusive interviews with the killer's family. Listen to the full season of Crime Beat early and ad-free on Amazon Music by asking Alexa to play the podcast Crime Beat.
We're here because your heightened awareness deserves heightened entertainment. The last show with David Cooper.
Ever wonder if Googling ideas makes us all think the same? Turns us into lemmings, sheep? A new study says it might. We'll dive into why the internet boosts individual creativity, but stifles group innovation, and how sometimes the best ideas might come from you not searching them up on the internet. I'm here with Dr. Daniel Oppenheimer, a psychology and decision sciences professor at Carnegie Mellon, to discuss just that. Danny, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
At first glance, Google seems like the ultimate brainstorming buddy. What made you suspect that us all using it to get to some answers that we want to solve might hurt a team's creativity?
Well, there's this research in psychology on fixation effects. And the basic idea is that when you see an idea, it makes you think of other similar ideas. So if I were to ask you, come up with as many things as you could spread, like peanut butter or jam, and you were to try to brainstorm things, you would come up with things like mayonnaise or other sorts of spreadable foods. And you wouldn't think about the fact that you can spread disease, you can spread rumors, etc. If I hadn't started by telling you you can spread peanut butter, who knows what you would have come up with first. But once you're starting to think about food, you think about food. And I saw this graph that showed what percentage of people who use the internet are using Google. This was before GPT was out, but and it was over 90%. And I thought, if everybody's using the same tool and everybody's asking it the same things, everybody's going to get the same answers. And if everybody's getting the same answers and the answers that we see prime us to think in certain ways, then everybody's going to be thinking in the same ways. So that led us to explore this possibility.
Your study mentions cognitive fixation, which I think what you're talking about when you get fixated on food-related spreads. Can we explore that a little more? In what ways does that come up, or how can cognitive fixation affect us?
Well, it's actually a pretty good thing, adaptive most of the time, to be able to be attentive to your environment. And so if I were to say something to you like, hit me, that means something very different at a casino when I'm playing blackjack than if I'm in a boxing ring, right? And so what we want to have happen is that because context matters, we want to be able to think about the things that are in the contexts that we are in, and we want to be able to do that quickly and easily. And so that's the basic idea behind fixation effects, is that we become more fixated on the things that are relevant to the environment we're in. And that's really helpful most of the time, but it's not helpful in certain circumstances. And those are the ones that we're particularly looking at.
So tell me more about those circumstances. In your study, you tested brainstorming umbrellas and shields. Why those objects? What happened with fixation with those?
So we were looking at umbrellas and shields, not because we had any interest in umbrellas and shields, but because we were interested in the ability to find things online. And if you ask people to come up with as many ideas as they can of what they could use an umbrella for, and you Google that question, the first thing that pops up is 10 uses for an umbrella. So we figured it'd be pretty easy for people to find ideas on the internet. If you, at the time when we ran this study, if you asked people to come up with as many uses of shield as possible, they would, there were two things that came up. You could hit someone with it, or you could avoid getting hit because you're using it. And those were the only two things that popped up on the first page of Google.
Danny, I think I'm getting fixation, because in my mind, I'm like, aren't those the only uses for those objects now that you mention them?
Well, it's great that you should ask that. I wish I had thought to pull up the file of all the really creative ideas people came up with. But with shields, you can use them as decoration. You could use them as a prop in a play. You could use them as a sled on a snowy hill.
I see. You just expanded my mind.
There you
You
go.
broke through the fixation, but sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah, with umbrellas, you can use them to reach things on high shelves. You can use them as a paperweight. You could use them to poke somebody from far away without them being able to poke you back.
Mary Poppins uses them to fly.
There you go. My favorite answer, actually, of all the answers we got, I wouldn't say it's the best answer, but it is certainly my favorite, was if you were for umbrella, if you were a goat, you could eat it. And so there is a use of an umbrella is to feed your goats. But most of the answers that people gave were a little more practical than that, but they were of a wide variety. What was interesting was that when we looked at what people said, people who had access to the internet all said the same things. And people who didn't have access to the internet had a much wider variety of ideas. And this was particularly true with umbrellas, where there's a lot of things being fed to you on the internet, and people tended to fixate on those and then only give responses that are similar.
Is a simple takeaway here during a brainstorming session, if you really want to be creative, maybe it's like a writing class, maybe it's a music class, who knows what, don't let people bring their phones in, don't let people bring their laptops in? Like, is that a practical takeaway from your findings?
It's an interesting question. I think a lot depends on how you're doing things. What I would suggest is that you start by thinking without the internet. And then, maybe you need to look something up. Maybe there's information you want to find that will help you brainstorm more effectively. But if you start with the internet, you'll be constrained by the internet. It's worth noting, I looked at this on the internet it's not just the internet. This happens with other people too. If you're in a group of people brainstorming and the first person jumps out and says, you can spread peanut butter, everybody else is going to start thinking about foods. And so even when you're brainstorming with other people, you're better off spending a minute or two having everybody individually brainstorm and then come together with their lists than just have everybody brainstorm together. So it's not unique to the internet, but it is an important thing, because if everybody's using the internet, then as a collective, we become less creative. And that's a problem.
You know, I didn't always used to work in radio. I used to work at a big tech company as an engineer, and I can't tell you how many times we had brainstorming sessions, and I'd wish I'd talked to you before we went into them, because I think like a minute or two, no phones, no one collaborates, everyone jots down their own ideas, is a great way to start and a great way to get benefits from your study. Is it just a Google problem, or do you think tools like ChatGPT or AI assistants create the same effect?
Great question. So in our original study, we said use the internet however you want. But for much of the study, many of the studies we're reporting in our this line of research was before GPT. That said, we've started to do work on GPT, and we're finding the same sorts of effects. So are some other labs. It's interesting if you think about what GPT is actually doing, how it works, its cognitive architecture. It's a predictive engine. So what it does is it takes the input you put in and said, what's the most likely thing a person would say in response to what we have just seen as a prompt. So if you think about that, almost by definition, it's going to restrict creativity, right? If it's trying to predict what the most likely thing someone's going to say is, that's not the most creative thing that someone's going to say is. And there are ways to use prompt engineering to get around that. But for the most part, GPT is sort of designed to restrict creativity in a way. And there's some great research not coming from my lab, but some really interesting research that if you ask people to write short stories, for example, or do design activities with GPT, people come up with better short stories when they use GPT. But everybody comes up with similar themes, similar writing styles, etc. So you end up with better stories that are all the same, and you get less variety in the stories.
Sort of like a tragedy of the commons. On an individual level, it's great, but if everyone's using it, there's a downside.
Exactly. And everybody wants to use it because everyone wants to maximize their own personal quality. But then that hurts society when we're just getting the same thing over and over and over.
And it all just becomes homogenized. So is it the same with Google searching at an individual level? It seems to boost ideas, but when people are trying to do group brainstorming or group idea, ideation, I guess is the word, we get that downside?
I mean, there is some, it depends, as most things do, on the nature of how you search and what you're searching for. But for the most part, that is what we're finding, that individuals do better when they use Google, and groups have less variety, which can be good or can be bad, depending on what you're hoping for out of your group.
I do wonder if search engine designers or large language model designers could take your research, add a little bit of randomness or chaoticness to it, and give answers that actually make us more creative.
Yeah, and I actually don't think you even need it to come top down. I mean, people can search in different ways. People can increase the temperature when they use GPT. There's a variety of settings you can mess with. I don't think this is a universal cognitive truth. I think this is about the way that people tend to use the internet naturally right now in the current culture with the current tools we have. My hope is that we can take this research and say, okay, let's start thinking about ways we can use the internet differently and more effective. And shorten that, narrow that gap between what we're doing now and what we could be doing to optimize creativity.
Danny, this has been a fascinating chat. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Dr. Daniel Oppenheimer is a psychology and decision sciences professor at Carnegie Mellon University. Coming up, do you think you'd fall for a computer malware scam? Do you think your grandmother would? Maybe not. A new study says that even tech rookies can outsmart sneaky software, maybe just with a little help. So you might not have that much to worry about as long as you're vigilant at the keyboard. Details in a few minutes.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Broadcasting from the neutral zone, where every perspective gets diplomatic immunity. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
We are often told that humans are terrible at spotting computer malware, viruses, but new research suggests that we're better at it than we think. With just a little guidance, even tech novices like Grandma can sniff out cyber threats. They can be cyber detectives. Could everyday users like you become the front line of defense in cybersecurity? We're here to discuss that with Dr. Daniel Vogel, a computer science professor at the University of Waterloo, who's recently looked into all this. Dan, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to talk about this work.
Having worked in the computer industry, this phrase gets repeated a lot. Computers are the weakest link in cybersecurity. That isn't the full story based on your research, is it?
Not at all. I think it's the humans using the computers are the weakest link. Like, we are easy to be tricked, but we can also, as our study shows, be more critical and look for some signs that maybe an automated system can't see.
So what inspired you to test whether people are better at spotting malware than they think?
So I'm actually a human-computer interaction researcher. So this project is in partnership with some cybersecurity researchers, notably Hassan Khan from the University of Guelph. He's the other professor who's the lead. And we came together to say, well, let's look at malware from a human perspective, and let's put people almost like lab rats, like in a room with a laptop. And we're going to expose them to programs, some of them malware, some of them what we call benign, so just normal software. And let's see what they do, if they can sniff out the difference, if they can, and what do they do to try to make those decisions, whether they think that it's malware or not.
It's wild because we all think it won't happen to us. But if you ever watched a cult documentary, the central thesis at the end is that it can happen to anybody. I once worked at a company that hired an outside contractor to do a phishing scam on the employees, an attempt to steal the password of the employees with the permission of the employer and no ill intent to use them. And one of the senior directors of security fell victim to the scam. And I think that taught me that it can happen to anybody. But if anybody can fall victim, it stands to reason that anybody can be able to prevent these things. So what are some of the ways that people are able to prevent scams without realizing they're good at doing it?
So what we found is that people are quite critical of things they can see. That's the first thing they look at. So what does the user interface look like? What is the file name? They look for things like certificates. So they will check these things out before installing it. But sometimes things look strange or off, like maybe there's a typo in the interface from some software that's maybe not top tier. And they go like, well, I'm not going to install it, even if they need to install it. So what we call false positives can happen too, and those kind of indications.
Interesting. So yeah, you monitored users in real time as they made decisions about suspicious downloads. What surprised you about the choices that users made? Is it just the false positives, or was there more to it than that?
We were actually surprised how good people were at finding malware. And in our study, we actually had 3 different groups. So we had basic users that didn't have any formal technical training, so like no computer science degree, for example. We had people that were intermediates, had maybe a CS degree or something equivalent, and advanced, which are security experts. And definitely the advanced intermediate did better than basic, overall. But we were surprised how well basic users did identify malware based on some of these criteria that, they just got something in their gut looking at it like, this looks wrong. But they also tended to be more false negatives. Basic people tend to go like, well, everything is malware. So that's a problem too. So
yeah, or maybe they realize they're part of a malware study and they're just saying everything's malware in an attempt to win the study or something like that.
Maybe, yeah. There's hopefully. We tried to, it's a study like this is extremely hard to run. Because we had to run real malware. So you can't just do that on a university network. So we had to put people in a room, close it off. Like, had to be what they call an air gap in the interface, or in the network.
Cool.
And let's see what they do.
Based on your research and based on observing people's hunches, which seem pretty good, better than they think they are there simple tricks we can employ to prevent getting viruses? Like, for example, I'm always worried my mother's going to click on the wrong link, but are there simple tricks I can tell her to become better at spotting this stuff?
Overall, be curious, be wary of things. Like, don't accept things, even if it's from someone that you might trust. But also don't be afraid to install something if after you really scrutinize it and check it out, that it's okay, because you may need to use this as part of your job. One thing we did find that people, like even after you install it, as it's being installed or shortly thereafter, there are There's like the feel of your machine can change when it's malware. You can start to, like, the CPU fan might come on, or there's a lot of network activity, like your network might slow down. So another thing that we found is beyond all, what does the interface look like? Kind of be attuned to how you feel your machine is running. Like, don't ignore some of these signs.
It's interesting. I once got an email saying a provider that I use, oh, you got to log into your account, blah, blah, blah. It was a phishing scam. I went to a web page. It looked like the provider. I typed in my username. I typed in my password. I used the same password for everything at the time. And I had this freak out. I immediately knew once I clicked login and it said like error that I had screwed up. I looked at the domain name. It happened to me, even though I have a software engineering degree. And at that point, I switched to a password manager, and now I do the right thing. I kind of knew, like I had this feeling, oh, I've done the wrong thing. Do people have that when they click the malware? Like, do they have that immediate response? Oh no, what have I done? I got to change my password.
I think sometimes they do. And we saw it in our study that people would see some signs that would indicate malware, but they would make up an excuse why, oh, it's probably nothing to worry about. Like, oh, certificate, I don't understand what the certificate means. It looks like it might have a wrong date, but maybe they just didn't update it. I'm going to keep going. So people do tend to make these excuses. And in our experiment design, we tried to create a bit of a sense of urgency, or try to replicate at least the situation in a business to try to get people to try to install things if it was safe.
There was a sort of puzzle you used, a spot the difference puzzle. Is that what you're talking about?
A little bit. Like we didn't really give them a lot of instructions, to be honest. In the first session, we just said, you're going to get these fake Teams messages. We tried to simulate what would happen from a real coworker, and you should either install the software or not. And while you do it, tell us why. In the second session, we gave them a tool that actually helped them monitor all these things I was talking about earlier, like the feel of your computer. So what countries is it connected to? How much CPU is being used? And that actually helped people quite a bit.
Ooh, what are tools like that called? I want to install one right now.
So there's one that's built into Windows, for example, called the Task Manager, but it's not really meant to monitor malware. It's got a lot of other features, too many features for the average person. So in our paper, we talk about a tool that we took that general idea, simplified it, added a couple enhancements to make it more about monitoring malware. It is, you can download it, it's open source, but I think this kind of tool could be really useful, even for operating system vendors to include.
We often think of malware as this like arms race between the bad actors creating software, creating tricks, and the good actors either educating the public or coming up with ways to prevent these tricks. What is the next step in kind of educating the public or in antivirus software? Where do you see this kind of arms race between malware going in the next 5 or 10 years, especially with AI improving these phishing attempts and these scams and these viruses?
This is the big threat, right? Like AI, these models are amazing at replicating user interfaces or long EULAs, that kind of thing, and even writing malware themselves. So definitely arms race is accelerating. I think what our study shows is that if people remain, curious, critical, look for certain signs, that don't discount things when it just feels off, and listen to your machine, like feel the machine, what it's doing, and see if it's something out of the ordinary, I think that can help a lot. But we're not going to solve it, unfortunately. It's just the arms race will continue.
Well, Dan, thanks for talking to me about malware. I guess people should know they're better at spotting it than they think. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Dr. Daniel Vogel is a computer science professor at the University of Waterloo in Ontario, Canada. That's a wrap on Wednesday night, and good news! The last show is available as a podcast. Well, it was available before, but it continues to be available. Just head to www.lastshow.pizza. That is lastshow.pizza, not .com in your web browser, and there you can find out more details about our podcast, including how to subscribe, or just search David Cooper Last Show in your favorite podcast app. Wasn't that easy? We'll be back tomorrow night. I am David Cooper, and this was never the first show.
Canada is best known for politeness, maple syrup, and hockey, but beneath the surface lies something far darker. I'm Mike Brown, and along with my co-host Matthew Stockton, we uncover the sinister side of Canada on the award-winning true crime podcast, Dark Poutine. Each Monday, we dive into chilling criminal cases, eerie historical events, strange disappearances, and spine-tingling tales of the paranormal, all with a uniquely Canadian twist. With over 300 episodes to binge for free, our stories reach far beyond Canada's borders, drawing in curious minds from around the world. If you're drawn to the dark, the mysterious, and the downright weird, it's time to join us. To explore the shadowy side of the True North, search for Dark Poutine, that's Poutine, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you're listening right now.